In March 2023, my family and I went on a trip to Scotland to fulfill a long-time dream. We rented a car so we could drive all over the place. We rented an apartment in Inverness so we could explore the Highlands before going south to Edinburgh. We loved our stay in Inverness. We had a great trip overall. And this is a chronicle of that trip. Hope you enjoy it. My wife did a great job planning our trip to Scotland and had all kinds of cool things for us to do. But we looked ahead and the weather was really going to play a big role in what we did on each day. So on the first day, we realized the weather was going to be really good. And so we decided to make that the day that we tried to climb at least halfway up Ben Nevis. Ben Nevis is the tallest mountain in Great Britain, I believe. And, there is a climb that's marked out with a path and, a footpath and all kinds of things like that. And it seemed like something we could do at least halfway. Our goal was really just to get to the halfway loch, like halfway up. And I'd read online that, it was the kind of a walk that people in moderately good shape could do. And I got the impression then that the trail itself was relatively easy or kind of moderately difficult, and it proved to be the opposite. After the fact, I looked it up again, and the trail was actually rated as kind of a hard climb, which it definitely proved to be. But we still set out, thinking we could make it to about halfway in about 2 hours. I think we arrived after about a 2.5 hour drive from Inverness to the visitor center at Ben Nevis. We arrived around 9:30 and started climbing. By about 11:15 or so, it was clear that we were not going to make the halfway loch in the amount of time we had scheduled, that we had other things we wanted to do on this day as well. So we kind of decided to stop for all kinds of reasons, but I wanted to see, I felt like we were close to halfway loch, so I decided to go on and to climb for another 20 or 25 minutes and see if I could make it there, at least to say I'd made it halfway. I didn't quite make it halfway, and then so I turned around and came down. I think the footage you see here at the end of the video will be the highest point that I made, but it was just a beautiful weather day, and it was a beautiful day for climbing, and it was great to be with my wife and my son. My son did a great job taking the lead and kind of scouting things out for us. Some places the trail was kind of icy, but just a really good overall experience, and a beautiful day for climbing and beautiful views from the trail. Yeah. Once we got down from Ben Nevis, we drove a short distance through Fort William and then to Glenfinnian, to the Viaduct. I was still getting used to driving there and the strange signs and the narrow roads without shoulders. Always a bit scared, but everything was okay until our tires started having a leak, which we were able to solve. The Viaduct is an impressive architectural achievement, made most famous probably from the Harry Potter films, and it made a really pleasant, surprisingly pleasant walk, and my wife did a great job of planning all these things out. So this was just a really kind of a short part of our trip, but a really memorable and beautiful part of the trip. On our drive back to Inverness from Fort William, we stopped at a little lay-by kind of parking lot thing next to Lochy. It was just such a beautiful, gorgeous day, and it was such a beautiful view, we couldn't help ourselves, and so we got out and took some pictures and walked around before heading back to Inverness. We got back to Inverness before it got dark. Took a little time to recover from all our hiking and my nervous driving. Then we were able to, from our apartment, walk across a bridge about a block to McLeod's Fish and Chips, which is just a fish and chip takeaway place that a lot of locals use. And it was a huge piece of fish, and it was really good and just what we needed at the end of the day, end of our first day in Scotland. Day two started off with a drive to Cairngorms National Park, this huge national park right in the middle of the Highlands. The roads there were much wider for the most part until we got closer, so the driving was a lot less stressful, even though we did have some stress in the parking lot. The park itself is just amazing, amazingly beautiful place, and the snow just made it even that much better. Just really stunning views everywhere we looked. Our primary mission in going to the Cairngorms National Park, though, was to see the park's herd of reindeer, which required us to hike to where the reindeer were. The hike wasn't very long and it wasn't particularly difficult, but it was really beautiful. It's quite a large group of people who hiked out there, so we just kind of hiked along the ridges and through the valleys and over a couple of not very steep hills, admiring the view and the snow and trying to stay warm the whole way. And then, after a little while, all of a sudden you came over a ridge and there the reindeer were, and they were smaller than I thought they would be. There were lots of them there. All the reindeer that we were with here are females, despite the horns. The male reindeer apparently were off somewhere else. So they kind of separate themselves like as a junior high school dance, but they just come up and wander between you and are completely, at ease with people. They are a wild reindeer herd. They go within the park where they want to go, but they're very used to people. And one of the reasons why they're very used to people and comfortable around people is they let you feed the reindeer, which is one of the real draws to doing this. But it was just incredible to get to stand there among all these animals. This is us feeding. This is my son, and then my wife is going to feed at the same time. So this is my son feeding the reindeer. Their lips are quite fuzzy.
Yep, I got you.
The people in the red coats are the guides, and they carry all this food with you so you can feed them.
That's it for y'all.
This is Lace.
You must have gotten a lot.
A beautiful reindeer.
This is me getting to feed one. The food is like this kind of special mixture, which they said is kind of like reindeer chocolate. They really love it. That's why they give it out.
You got a little more. Here.
That's just our GPS to kind of try and make sure everything's kind of as efficient as possible so that you know where they are.
And then, whenever you're ready, you can hike back out by yourself. I think we stayed among the reindeer for about an hour, and then we hiked back along the same path we came. And the scenery was really just gorgeous, and we had a great time, and we were left here to go to our second destination on this day. One of the things I was most excited about seeing were these Clava cairns, which is a Bronze Age burial site where Bronze Age people built these really kind of elaborate tombs, like dome tombs made out of relatively small rocks, and buried people in there and oriented the doorways so they lined up with the sun on the shortest day of the year. But one of the reasons I was most excited about it was because it has a stone circle or two, and I've always wanted to go somewhere where there's a stone circle, and I missed out on going to Stonehenge the two times I was in England. So that was really cool, and it was just a really cool place. About 1,000 years after the dome tombs were built, some other cairns were built, which were just called curb cairns. They never had a top. They were just surrounded by stones. But it was all really cool, and despite the trauma of having to drive on roads that were really narrow to get there, it was really well worth it, and I loved it. Stop in a few bookish places. The first is Leakey's Bookshop here in Inverness, which is kind of like the dream used bookstore, I guess, with the kind of owner who literally has thousands and thousands of books and knows everything he actually owns, and they're just kind of stacked up all over the place. It's in a really old building, which to me kind of looked like a church, but at one time or something, but has now been fully converted to this bookshop, which was just awesome. And there's a wood-burning stove and, all these little warrens of books, and it's narrow and crowded and musty smelling and, everything you want to use bookstore to be. After we went book shopping, we walked over to a restaurant called Scotch and Rye, where we didn't have a reservation, but they managed to fit us in. We had fried haggis, which they called popcorn haggis. I got a hamburger. I think Ben had a Philly cheesesteak. We had some drinks. It was a really nice place, and we had a really great time. Day 3 involved a lot of driving on all kinds of roads in relatively wet, damp weather, even though we did have some sunshine from time to time. Sometimes roads got incredibly narrow and were a little tense, and sometimes they were over really beautiful places. In the process of our day 3, we essentially drove all the way around Loch Ness, from Inverness across the River Ness, and then all the way around the far end of Loch Ness, which provided us with a lot of opportunities to provide some views and some video footage of Loch Ness. Our first stop on day 3 was Beauly Priory in the village of Beauly. This was a priory established in the late 13th century and then taken over by, I believe, the Cistercians somewhere in the 15th century. And then it fell into disrepair. So it's really interesting because you can see from the floor here, there are all kinds of burials that took place over different points in time. And some, relatively important local historical figures were buried here up through the 15th century. Then it fell into disrepair, and locals began just burying their family members inside the walls of the priory itself, even though the structure had lost its roof and largely collapsed. But it was just beautiful. So after Beauly Priory, we drove to Urquhard Castle, which is really the first truly touristy place we went with a big visitor center and, museum shop, and there's a video. And it's also the first place we went where I think our pictures and our videos don't really capture the essence of what we saw, because it is like the kind of castle ruin that I think everybody would like to be able to just go and explore. And we did, and we took a lot of video, we took a lot of pictures, but none of them really, I think, captures it. It is right on the banks of Loch Ness. The castle itself changed hands numerous times, was expanded. In the end, when the castle was threatened by enemies, whoever was the owner of that time decided to blow it up rather than allow it to fall into enemy hands. And so a large section of it was blown up, and then it fell into disrepair, and it became the ruin that you see now. But the grounds and the castle itself are brilliantly maintained by the Scottish Historical Organization, and it really was a stunning place to go. Our third stop on day 3 were the Invermoriston Falls, which essentially are at the far end of Loch Ness. This would be where I think fresh water feeds into Loch Ness itself. And the park there has this wooded area, which literally looks like hobbits could be hiding, under the tree limbs. I'm pretty sure this is where Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo hid from the Nazgul on their way to Bree. Just like really beautiful falls. Forest, and then you can hear the sound of running water in the background, and then just kind of stunning falls and bridges, and there was a little kind of stone hut you could go in to look out over the falls. And this is one of those things my wife picked, which I never would have picked in a million years, and I know I've said this before, but her choices were just spot on throughout our vacation, and really led us to some really special places that I'm not sure a whole lot of people see. And it kind of was a perfect blend of like touristy, historical things, natural things, animals, time in cities. It really was just perfectly planned by her, and I owe her a lot for a trip of a lifetime. Our last stop on day 4 was another set of falls. This was the Falls of Fourier, which are really remote, and they're kind of on what would be the south side, I guess, of Loch Ness, a little bit less developed, a lot more narrow roads and cattle guards and sheep, and really scenic but somewhat hairy drive. The falls themselves are beautiful, very high. The water volume is a little bit down because there's less snow melt, I think. But it was a really great place, kind of a long hike down to where they were, and then a long hike back up, but just a really beautiful place. Okay, we got back from our long drive around Loch Ness, and we went to this pub called Hootenanny, which says it's the best place for Scottish live music. We didn't know there was live music there until we got there, and there was. Pretty straightforward pub food. I had fish and chips. Ben had some kind of shrimp, terry head, macaroni and cheese. We had a few drinks and enjoyed ourselves, and then after that retired for the evening back to our apartment to get ready for day 4. Day 4, we just stayed in Inverness and explored the city a little bit. We'd originally planned to drive to the Isle of Skye. As you can see here, the weather was really bad, and it's about a 2.5-hour drive to the place we wanted to go on the Isle of Skye, which is kind of remote. And given the fact that I was going to have to drive the next day about 2.5 hours to get to the Edinburgh area, and that we had a leaky tire, and I was kind of worn out from driving, and we were worried about the weather and the road conditions, we decided to stay in Inverness and just kind of explore the city, which was great. We walked past and went into some of the sites in Inverness. We walked along the river, as you can see. We went and did some shopping that we need to do at a shopping center. You can see it snowing in this image here to give you some idea of what the weather was like. Inverness is a really beautiful place, a really walkable place, with pretty much everything you could want to have in a relatively small city, all the conveniences, some historical sites, lots of great restaurants and pubs. We found a World War I memorial in Inverness, which I saw several of actually while we were there, and it may not seem like a big deal to you if you're living in Europe, but as an American, seeing a World War I memorial is somewhat unusual. And this one actually had the name of maybe a relative, Andrew M. Bruce there, who died fighting in World War I. We crossed the river on this footbridge, which is actually from the 19th century. I have, probably top of this video, I have a thing for water. We went to Inverness Cathedral, which was, I believe, mid-19th century construction. Really nice on the inside, really beautiful. We also later walked down to the Catholic, I'm just going to call it a church, where there wasn't a cathedral so much, and went inside there. Both places had really amazing stained glass. And some other pictures of the city that Terry took with her camera. She's a really talented photographer. Some that we'd taken the night before. Give you some of the different images of the city. And after our exploration, we got ready for dinner that night after a great breakfast, which we'll see later, and just really enjoyed our stay in Inverness. Okay, day 4, we had a really good food day. We went out for breakfast in the morning at this place called Wild Pancakes, which served American-style pancakes and even American-style bacon. I had cinnamon swirl, Terry had a hot chocolate and the maple syrup pancakes. Ben had butter and sugar, and it was really all great. We made a booking for a nighttime reservation at a place called the Mustard Seed, which had an open wood-burning fireplace in the middle of it. Terry had soup for an appetizer. I can't remember what I had. And then we all kind of had fish. Terry had hake. I had sea bass. Ben had salmon. We followed it up with dessert, and Terry and I split a sticky toffee pudding. And the Mustard Seed was really good food. We just had a great eating experience in Inverness all together. The beginning of day 5 meant leaving the apartment we had rented in Inverness and heading out towards Edinburgh. The apartment was really great. It was very comfortable. It had lots of room for the three of us, so we could each be in a different room. We needed to get away from one another. It had a lot of comforts of home. Probably most important was the kitchen and the washer-dryer combo. Day 5 started off when we were going to leave our apartment in Inverness. It was a snowy morning and a long drive. I talk a lot about the drive and how nervous it made me, but the scenery was just literally gorgeous, and Terry did a great job of navigating us where we needed to go. And so the drive was actually one of the great parts of what we did in terms of scenery. We arrived after about 2.5 hours in Stirling Castle, paid a visit to Uncle Bob on the outside of the castle before going in, and then just kind of explored the castle inside and out. Stirling Castle was much more than I thought it would be. I don't know what I thought it would be, but I was wrong about it. It's really a huge complex, in part home to, I believe, James VI of Scotland, and really well done by the Scottish Historical Organization, inside and out. It was really difficult to keep my eyes off the view, though, as you'll tell from the video footage. But, you know, a great kind of castle that had been converted into a residence for royalty. This is the throne room with the unicorn, which is the national animal symbol of Scotland. And the ceiling had been decorated what we call the Stirling heads. These are reproductions. The originals are also on hand, but they're not painted this way. This apparently is what they would have looked like originally. And then the Great Hall was, well, really great. Just a huge space, and I'm impressed by the size of the fireplaces, of course. And this is inside the chapel. I don't know if you can hear the music or not. And again, on the castle grounds were really well maintained, despite the fact that it was still March and cold and snowy. And again, view. As a matter of fact, I think from here on out, it's almost all just the view from various sides of the castle. And then I walked along the battlements for a little while. Actually, a little narrower than they look. I was more afraid of falling off on the inside than I was worried about the height on the outside. After Stirling Castle, we drove a short distance to the Bannockburn battlefield, where Robert the Bruce won Scottish independence by defeating the forces of Edward II in 1314. Since my last name is Bruce, and my family's of Scottish descent a long time ago, going around and seeing Robert the Bruce sites was something I really wanted to do. There's not a whole lot to see at the Bannockburn battlefield, but it was something that I wanted to do, and something that I'd hoped to share with my dad. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But it was a really great, beautiful day, and the battlefield itself is just really kind of just like more like a lovely park than anything else. One of the great things about visiting the touristy places in Scotland is they usually come with cafes, so we ate lunch at the Stirling Castle Cafe, sandwiches, soups, things like that, and then we went on to our hotel in Dunfermline, which is the Pitbauchlie house, I believe, which was really a cool place, a really comfortable bed. My wife thought the faucets were cool. They have a lovely garden, and the restaurant, which is glassed in, overlooks the garden. And there was a great sunset, and we ate dinner there at the hotel restaurant. My wife had a hamburger, I had a steak pie, Ben had some kind of a curry, a couple of drinks, and then we were tired from our day and turned in and get ready for day 6. We started off day 6 by leaving the hotel, the Pitbauchlie house, and driving to Dunfermline Abbey and Palace. This is a part of my Go See Robert the Bruce things, where you're going to see my name a lot here. Hey, ego is nothing. I'd hoped to get in and see the tomb of Robert the Bruce, but it was closed today for reasons that no one could explain. And we called, so there is a lot of footage here of us walking around the outside. Which is actually one of the things I really like to do. I like the touristy, historical sites that tell you lots of stuff, but I really like the ones that are just open and you can just walk around and, touch things and explore on your own. I really like that. Also on the grounds there is Dunfermline Palace, which I believe is a place where English King Charles I was born, and I believe Dunfermline Palace, this is the ruins here, also played host to various Scottish nobles, including Mary, Queen of Scots. They've turned the whole area into kind of like it's attached to a park, and we walked around, and guess what? I found another World War I memorial here in Dunfermline, and even found a Bruce on the list of people from the area who had died fighting World War I. But a little disappointing, but a great start to our day. From Dunfermline, we drove to Falkirk to see the Kelpies sculptures. One of the things my wife wanted to see the most are these incredible horse sculptures made out of metal that represent the Scottish legend of the water horses. And if you think the shape of something looks a little bit familiar, in legend, the Loch Ness Monster is a water horse. But there's a great park there in Falkirk with a canal that runs right through the middle, really of the sculptures. There's a visitor center. We were able to get some snacks. It was really great. One of the big missions of day 6 was to get to see some Highland cows. Somehow we missed them. We were further up in the Highlands in Inverness. So we went to Cairngorms Hill, which is part of the Pentland Hills Park kind of thing, in search of Highland cows. And it was really quite a hike to get up to where the cows were. You can kind of see already, you can see Edinburgh in the distance, even Edinburgh Castle. This is just at the bottom. And to get to the cows, we actually had to hike up onto the other side of where you see those green hills there. And there's a little valley kind of over there, not all the way up to where the snow-covered hills were. But it's actually kind of quite a hike, and this ended up being my absolute favorite day. Here you can see that we've kind of gotten to that plateau where we hope to see the cows, and you can even see, I believe, some cows off in the distance there. But my wife really wanted to see these Highland cows, and it was great when we finally, walked up on them. This is the first one of the cows that we saw, which was dedicatedly eating grass. You can see one way up on the hill on the right there too. And so this one hardly ever lifted his head up. This one kept his backside turned to us. But we walked on and then came to a place where there was just most of the herd was. And so we got a lot of great footage. Again, you can kind of see how high up we are by looking in the distance. But just these cows cooperated much more, moved around, and generally did cow things that were enjoyable to watch and to film. But like I said, this was my favorite day. My wife got some great pictures of cows and sheep and horses and other things. Our last stop on day 6 was Roslynn Chapel. which made famous in the book movie The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. And I wanted to see it because I'd heard it was the most intricately carved, kind of mysterious chapel in Great Britain. And, I haven't seen all of them, but I'll tell you, there are a lot of carvings, and it really is overwhelming on the inside. Unfortunately, they don't let you film on the inside. So hopefully from some of these images of the outside, you'll get an idea of how much stonework, stone carving actually went into Roslynn Chapel. For a while it was abandoned and derelict, and so damage was done inside and out, but it truly is amazing, and a place I'm really glad we went. We left Roslynn Chapel and went to this Italian restaurant in Roslynn, I believe is how you pronounce the name of the town. We had appetizers. Terry had bruschetta. Then our main courses were, Ben had some kind of seafood pasta combo, can't remember the name of. I had a seafood risotto. Terry had lasagna, which she enjoyed a lot. And then we drove to our next hotel, an American-style hotel near Edinburgh Airport. Day 7 started off with us going to Edinburgh Airport and turning in our rental car, and then catching the Edinburgh tram into Edinburgh to explore the city a little bit on our last day in Scotland. We went to Edinburgh Castle first, and the views from the castle, even before you go in, are just amazing. Like Stirling Castle, it sits on this kind of rocky mountaintop kind of thing right in the middle of the city. You can tell the weather was not the best, but didn't really affect our enjoyment of the visit at all. And the weather changed over the course of the day a lot. Also, like Stirling Castle, it's just overwhelming. There's so much to see and things to go in and exhibits that there's no way to really capture the whole thing in a video, but we really liked it. Visiting Stirling Castle and then Edinburgh Castle was kind of, I think, really a good idea because you kind of get the difference in the history of the two places. But we really enjoyed our time at Edinburgh Castle. After we finished at Edinburgh Castle, we just spent the day kind of walking around Edinburgh. Terry took some great pictures of the city and all kinds of different weather conditions. You can see the weather changed, which, apparently is very typical for Scotland. But I really enjoyed just walking around a city with no real agenda, no real things that we have to do. We really enjoyed all the closes and all the little narrow passageways that led to them, and just kind of seeing some of the architectural sites along the Royal Mile, and I believe High Street and Victoria and Bow Street. It was really just a great place to spend some time. And then we saw a bagpiper. I don't know, bagpipes can be a little cheesy, but I love bagpipe music. St. Giles Cathedral here was beautiful. We did not go inside because we were just, again, walking around. More pipes. It was pretty cold this day, so I was impressed with this guy in his kilt. Like I said, we really loved all the little closes and narrow passageways. Those were fun to explore and to look down. So that was an aspect of the city we really liked. This one leads to the Writers' Museum. We searched for quite some time for the Scottish Writers' Museum, and we finally found it. And in this really kind of cool-looking close, which is this little closed neighborhood, has a floor for Robert Louis Stevenson here. We could look at, Robert Louis Stevenson's books and his pictures. I love Stevenson's Treasure Island and Kidnapped, and I read The Black Arrow this year, and so that was really cool. His floor, there's a floor for Stevenson, one for Burns, and one for Walter Scott. His floor is downstairs. I thought didn't seem very fair. The Robert Burns floor is on the second floor, and it's a little bit nicer. If you ever wanted to see Robert Burns, fork and knife, or his bumbershoot, there you go, all in a little case. And then an actual, manuscript, a poem that he wrote. And that was pretty cool. I didn't go to the Walter Scott floor because I haven't read Scott. This is Flesh Market Close, which is the title of an Ian Rankin, Inspector Rebus novel. We just happened to walk by it and I thought it'd be cool. And this is us walking down Victoria and Bow Street, which is really downhill to get to Armchair Books. It's a really tiny bookstore, which has just books stacked everywhere and is really cool. So that's pretty much the extent of the bookish stuff I did.
Small place.
We didn't go into the up to the Walter Scott floor of the Writers' Museum, but we did go to the Walter Scott Memorial, which may be the biggest memorial monument ever built for a writer. Then Ben thought we should go to the National Gallery, so we did. It was a great idea. We really enjoyed walking around looking at the paintings there. And then we just kind of hung around Princess Street Park and, until we were tired and ready to go back to the hotel and catch the tram back out towards the airport. The pub where we were going to eat was closed, so we stopped at Byron Proper Burgers and had hamburgers and stuff, kind of American style. They actually called fries and not chips. I had a hamburger. Ben had a chicken sandwich. Terry had macaroni and cheese and onion rings, and it was really good. Okay, so that's it. That's our trip to Scotland. Terry took so many incredible pictures. I thought I'd just share a few more here. The outrow. This was really the trip of a lifetime, and my wife made this possible for me, and it was great to travel with our son. Maybe the next time we travel, my daughter and her husband will get to go with us.